Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Monday debrief. I'm Patrick McPartlin and I'm joined by Craig Nisbet, who some of you will probably know better as 9125 Analysis. Craig, good to have you on again to discuss Saturday's game. How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Obviously, excluding the obvious, but yeah, looking forward to kind of picking out the bones in this one.
Yeah, I think lots to talk about from the game. Unfortunately, not a lot of it particularly positive, but I think we're getting a little bit used to that by now. Before we get going, just a quick word for our sponsors. We're thrilled to have Weissmann, a global leader in the boiler industry, known for their top-notch German engineering, sponsoring our podcast. They've teamed up with Scotland's very own award-winning installation team, MPH Boilers, making this a perfect match right here in Scotland. Weissmann's boilers are engineered to deliver not just warmth, but unparalleled efficiency and reliability. We're talking about cutting-edge technology designed to save you on energy bills and reduce emissions. With MPH Boilers, you're getting service from the best in the business, a local team committed to excellence and customer satisfaction. As part of this incredible partnership, when you choose a Weissmann boiler installed by the MPH Group, you'll also get a free internet controller, making it a breeze to manage your heating anytime, anywhere. Plus, they offer the first year's service for free, all about giving you peace of mind and making sure you're well looked after when it comes to your home and your boiler. So if your boiler is showing its age or you're considering an upgrade, this is your chance to get world-class engineering with local expert service. Weissmann and MPH Boilers, a match made in Scotland. Be sure to check them out and take the first step towards a warmer, more efficient home. Glad to have MPH on board. Let's get down to Saturday's game. Craig, I think a lot to talk about from the 90 minutes or the 90 plus minutes. I think for me, possibly for you as well, the sort of biggest kind of talking point from the starting lineup was the absence of an out-and-out centre forward. Dylan Vente, Adam Le Fondre obviously on the bench, and Nick Montgomery going with a front three of Martin Boyle, Elie Youan and Mizian lead it up top. What did you make of that when you saw the team come out? Because we've seen before that, you know, Mizian does look to be better suited off the left. Youan's been playing well on the right. So was it a little bit surprised that with two centre forwards available, Nick Montgomery went with none?
Yeah, I think so. I think most people, going into this game, I think seem to be wanting, I think wanting Mariah Welsh back in the starting 11, which I think was fair. And then, continuing with Le Fondre, now knowing Vente was an option off the bench, keeping Mizian on the left and probably giving Youan the nod ahead of Boyle and maybe bringing Boyle off the bench. I think from most Hibs fans on Twitter, that seemed to be the lineup that people were expecting. Listen, Mizian can play through the middle. He's done it before and he's had, some success with it. But yeah, and I certainly think how the game panned out and the success we actually had going down the left-hand side and Motherwell's right, part of me thinks, I wonder if Mizian had played out there and we had Le Fondre in the middle, if we could have maybe taken a few more chances and things could have gone differently. But certainly I did think it was, maybe saying it's a bold move is maybe a bit much, but it was certainly like an interesting move for Montgomery to do. And listen, like there was some good performance there. The link up between Youan and Mizian was actually pretty good, having watched the game back again. So he probably can justify it. But yeah, maybe I'm a bit old fashioned, but I kind of just like having that vocal point of a striker. And I actually think Le Fondre has, despite not maybe getting as many goals, he has made a massive difference in the team. And I think with more minutes under his belt and things like that, I felt like a goal was coming. He was just denied from a great save from Mitov against St Johnstone the week before. I sort of felt like he was warming up and getting a bit more consistency. So yeah, I was surprised to see him to not start, and I was actually quite surprised not to see him come on as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that with what was at stake in the game when Hibs went a goal up, my kind of gut instinct was, surely with Motherwell having to be sort of more and more open to try and get back into the game, that would be the ideal time to, possibly make a change in the middle, which he did by bringing on Dylan Levitt, which at the time I thought was a good alteration. But I think it was just, like a lot of fans in the away end, we were sitting there thinking, well, surely he's going to bring on a centre forward. And, time just seemed to tick by and he didn't sort of bring either Vente or Le Fondre on. Could you see anything that suggested why he might not have done that? Or were you sort of a bit like the rest of us, kind of at a loss as to why he didn't sort of just go hell for leather and, throw one or both of them on in the bid to get a second goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think having watched the game back, like obviously when we get the penalty and we go 1-0 up, like obviously, like you say, Levitt coming on for Mariah Welsh, I probably agreed with. I think Mariah Welsh had been a bit rash and picked up a booking and had sort of, you were kind of getting a wee bit worried for him, especially Willie Collum being the ref as well. But not long after that substitution, Motherwell made a triple sub. And it looked like to me they sort of changed and went a bit like 4-3-3 and kind of went a little bit more attacking. So I'm not sure at that point if he thought, oh, maybe we'll hold off just now and just deal with it and continue. But obviously then he sort of made the Martin Boyle substitution sort of 10 minutes or so later for Josh Campbell, which I did think was quite a strange decision as well. I thought maybe it was because, I mean, to be fair, Motherwell were getting down our right-hand side a little bit. I think, again, he was playing quite well and looked a threat. Maybe it was to counter that, but I certainly think I probably would have taken Emiliano off for Campbell. Probably would have been the first sub. And then, yeah, at that point, you could then, if you wanted to take Boyle off or if you had picked up a knock or something, then, yeah, you put on Lafondra or put on Venti, put Melida left, put Youan right, and then you can kind of like retain quite a dangerous counter-attack. Even as well, I thought with Lafondra coming on, he's great at buying free kicks. He's great at just disrupting things a little bit. And I did think in that latter part of the game, as Motherwell like kind of threw the kitchen sink and threw a few more attackers on as well, that having somebody that could just buy a free kick, settle things down a little bit would have been useful. But yeah, it seemed like after the Campbell switch, we just went, right, that's it. That's what we're going to do till the end, which I did think was a strange decision because, I mean, it's easy coaching in hindsight, but I certainly think, especially when they put Elie Youan and I think Ferry as well, I would have thought to kill a bit of time, could he not have put Hanlon, Stevenson on, just eating up that additional time, plus shoring things up a little bit in the back, getting more bodies into the box. So, like I say, it's easy in hindsight to reflect on these things, but yeah, I did think they were like a handful of strange subs and strange decisions.
I think that has been a bit of a theme in some of the games under Montgomery, that there have been odd substitutions, or he's maybe made a change where sort of like there's a more obvious one on the bench to the fans watching on, or to us in the press box. But was it? Do you think it was more just it was almost a kind of overthinking it, or just a sort of, I don't want to say fear, but just a kind of an acknowledgement that Motherwell are very good in attack. They've shown that time and time again. Was it maybe about trying to kind of nullify threats that they had without sort of changing too much of the Hibs game plan, or was it just like a little bit spooked by being a goal up and then not sort of taking there were a lot of missed opportunities, again quite a few chances. So I mean, could you see sort of any kind of logic in not making more changes, or was it?
Yeah, I think sometimes when if you're on the sideline coaching, you're thinking about all these subs you can make, and sometimes it can be a bit of paralysis where the time ticks on and you just think, well, I'm not going to change it, and we'll maybe see this out towards the end. So there might have been a little bit of that, down both sides. Defensively things seem to be going okay. Like I didn't think the fullbacks were getting overrun or anything like that. So I'm really not too sure. He might have just been thinking, especially as Motherwell kind of pushed on, having Mizian and having Youan on the counter-attack is, probably a really good option. Either one of them's got a lot of pace to burn, can get in behind. That's something that Lafondra and Venti probably can't do, in fairness. Certainly running in behind at big distances, especially if we're clearing the ball away. So he might have thought Campbell will tuck back in naturally. We'll end up kind of having that extra body in midfield alongside Newell and Levitt, and then we can sort of leave Youan and Mizian as a two, and we can just try and get the ball long. I think maybe that would have been behind his decision. And listen, the goal comes very, very late on, and it's not really from any of their decision making. So, he can turn around and say, "Well, we lost it for other reasons." But I sort of felt like, especially in the second half, we had this. We actually really dominated the second half. Like watching the second half back earlier on today, we create chance from about the 50th minute onwards. We create so many chances up until around about the 75th, 76th, and then it kind of dies off a little bit. Motherwell kind of get back into the game. So certainly the decision making up until that point was working for him, but I just felt we could have just, like you say, maybe thrown a little bit more caution to the wind, put Le Fondre on, and we maybe would have got that second chance and got the second goal, which I think would have killed the game off.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Obviously, I mean, we're speaking about the game as if it is the end of the season, and in a sense, it is because Hibs have missed out on the top six, and now there's 5 games to come against the other bottom 6 teams, rather than another game against Celtic, Rangers, another derby, a chance to push for European football. So, with that in mind, I mean, did you see anything? I mean, obviously there were positives. We just talked about the chances that they created in the second half. In terms of like overall positives from the Hibs performance, what did you sort of like pick out? What did you like about the performance that made you think, actually, there's some good signs here. This bodes well for the, if not the future, at least for the remaining 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, actually, when the game finished, I actually thought Will Fisher had a really strong game. I thought defensively he was, he has in the last couple of weeks looked a little bit shaky, but I thought he was really strong in the game yesterday. I thought, even though it was a small sort of substitute appearance, I actually thought Levitt came on and calmed the game down a lot, and certainly it made some really good interceptions, some good forward passes. And I mean, this might be unpopular to say, but I'm going to caveat it with it, is I actually thought Elie Youan had a very good game. Now, I totally get, his final product was massively lacking, and he made some poor decisions, and especially in front of goal. But overall, like the way he was getting the ball, driving at the opposition, he sort of in that space between McGinn and Casey. In the second half, in particular, I thought he looked really good. And I'm sure every Hibs fan has had this debate in the pub and in the stadium, is that the reason he's at Hibs is if he had that final product, he would be somewhere else and he'd be somewhere better. So I actually thought he really came into his own and played well. And in the future, if he's to stay, I'm not really sure, but if he was to stay, you'd like to think after this season, if he can start adding, even taking 1 out of 3 of those chances, then what a player we have. And he's already contributed really well this season, anyway, with some big moments and some big goals. So I thought he played well. Overall, I mean, it was quite a dominant performance. I mean, I think I checked StatsBomb before we came on air, and I think Motherwell only had 1 shot on target, which was the goal. And we had quite a high XG. We know we missed a lot of big chances, and we actually had quite a lot of half chances as well, where the ball's just maybe bobbled away or just got away from somebody just as they're in the sort of final part of the pitch and looking to score. So it was actually quite a positive performance, but it just doesn't wash with all the stuff that's come before it, and another missed opportunity, another win that's turned into a draw. And I put a tweet out the other day sort of saying, like, I went back through some of the results, and I think I worked out we have kind of lost 18 points from turning wins into draws and turning draws into losses, and from goals coming in 75 minutes plus. And ultimately I think that could be a real big problem for Montgomery. But going into this next 5 games, there's I don't know how the fans are going to react. I don't know how they're going to take to the team, and I'm kind of a wee bit concerned about the atmosphere and how things will go, because we really have to sort of rally around the team, but we know there's going to be big changes in the summer, so I think it's going to be a really odd atmosphere. But certainly some of those players who I mentioned previously did have good games, and obviously you're crossing your fingers that they're going to take that into the final 5 games.
You mentioned Elie Youan there, and I'm not going to turn this into the Elie Youan show, but obviously, with your coaching experience, when you have a player like Youan, because obviously, I think anytime there's a debate about him this season, it's where would Hibs be without his goals and assists, and you obviously you can't sort of argue with his numbers. But is there something to be said for having a player with that sort of individual skill and ability, who is maybe going to get you those goals and assists, but is kind of frustrating to play with as a teammate? So for example, if you might have a player in there who is going to get fewer goals and fewer assists, but the overall way that they play sort of will contribute more to more positive results. Is there a kind of balancing act to be done there?
I think within your overall lineup and maybe the makeup of your front players, then yeah, you might need somebody to balance them off on the other side that is a bit more consistent. And I think this season, obviously, with Boyle being injured and international duty and coming back and sort of trying to find form, that's been difficult. So there's probably been a bit more, probably pressure put on Elie to perform and to get goals and to get assists. And then obviously with lacking a striker and Venti not getting goals and Lafondra's injury as well, he has, like if we take away some of his goals and his assists, we'd be in a really, really bad position. He turned a lot of defeats into draws, Motherwell, Hearts, and had big moments. So, I can definitely get Hibs fans' frustrations with him, like totally. But he's somebody that I think if he's got the right, and I suppose we'll not know this, but if he's got the right attitude in training and he's working hard to improve and things like that, then he'll get more consistent. Like he will get there. But that game in particular, it was just such a shame that up until those final moments, he'd just done everything right. And it was just those last little bits, that little bit of composure to square the ball to a teammate or to hit the target, like he had the opportunity in the first half. And I did sort of feel for him a lot, because we could have been, we could have been saying it was a masterclass and he's sitting with a hat trick or 2 goals and 2 assists, and we've got ourselves into a good position to be in the top 6. But he's certainly somebody that we should be getting behind, I think, as a fan base, although I do understand people's frustrations around them.
Yeah, I think he's probably, like quite a few players, I think he's probably suffered from the kind of overall atmosphere this season, where it has been, it has been a little bit ugly at times. It has been, fans are obviously frustrated with results, and when you get a bad result, you kind of target individuals, which is unfortunate, but I think just kind of the way the game's going. And I think as well that, he has been obviously very good in front of goal in terms of goals and assists, but there has been a couple of occasions where, he has sold the jerseys a little bit, which I think people are kind of focusing more on that than perhaps the positives. And I think you're right in what you say, that, he did have a good performance against Motherwell, and, it would be good to see the supporter kind of getting behind him a bit more. I mean, you'll have seen the things on social media today about, his appearance at the kind of Player of the Year bash last night, and, winning an award for the sort of 2 goals in however many seconds it was, I think 83 against Hearts at Tynecastle back in October, and, making a reference by all accounts to not being booed by the fans, which I think is, the suggestion is that I wasn't there. The suggestion is he was laughing when he said it, but it is a little bit kind of, it's a bit of a damning indictment, isn't it? Of, how sort of, I don't know what the right word is here, but how sort of fickle fan bases can be sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I think like going back for the last couple of seasons, really, I've felt like we've been promised so much as a fan base, and we've just, where the players, the management, even the guys upstairs as well, we've just failed to deliver. We've chopped and changed manager. We've made some really kind of bizarre signings. None of it's really added up. We've tried to target young players from abroad to try and develop them, and they've not been developed or not been given game time. Then we've sort of done a bit of panic buying in January, and then we've loaned out these young guys that we were meant to be developing. So I think the fan base overall is just, I suppose, a bit sick of just like going, wait, what are we as a club? What are we trying to do? Who are we getting? Are we getting behind this person for a long period of time? Are we not? Are they staying? Are they going? And yeah, and I think you're right. The atmosphere, especially I think after, the investment was announced, and, everyone seems to be thinking this is going to be a lot of wholesale changes, and there's going to be there's lots of players out of contract, and we started to see some players leave in January, and more rumours about players leaving in the summer as well. There has been a bit of sort of this, kind of been caught in a bit of purgatory really this season. It's been, and especially this last couple of months, and I think getting in the top 6 was kind of like, well, if we get there, we get the big games, like you said, and at least we can maybe have a couple of good results. Like, I look back at like last year with Lee Johnson, that when we got into the top 6, we got we beat Celtic, I think we beat St Mirren. We actually had some good moments in there as well, and it kind of got the feel good factor ahead of the following season. And I think that would have made a big difference, us getting into that now. And you're right, the fan base can be fickle at times, like all supporters, but I think for us in particular, it's just been every season the promise, then the changes and things like that. And that's why the board and, you know, whoever's in charge going forward, whether it's Montgomery and stuff or and McDermott in terms of the director of football role, we have to like 100% get the recruitment right, and really show the club need to throw their support behind Montgomery if they want to keep him, so the fan base can deal with it, and then we can move on and we can get to supporting the team. But we have to have some sort of consistency and make some sort of progression.
Yeah, you're not asking for much there, are you?
just a wee bit.
I think, I mean, my kind of gut feeling is that, you know, based on what we've seen from Hibs under Montgomery, and I think there's, you know, a lot of it is about the fact that, you know, Hibs are, I mean, and we're sick of saying this, but, you know, they have been a team in transition for so long. You know, you've got several managers' worths of players in the squad. Obviously, you know, a bit of surgery in January in both ways, in both directions, sorry. But my kind of gut feeling is, you know, looking at how the team's performed, I think where they've sort of ended up, as in the bottom six, is probably, based on what we've seen, is probably sort of about right for this season. I haven't really seen anything in terms of, you know, consistency or, you know, kind of the amount of fight required to be in the top six, or even just a kind of statement win to sort of suggest, you know, actually, yeah, there are reasons that Hibs should be in the top six, other than kind of, you know, expectations, size of the club, etc. And I think that's maybe been part of the difficulty for, you know, the fan base, has been trying to come to terms with the fact that, you know, Hibs are in a bit of flux at the moment. It does feel a bit like a project, not just on the pitch, but just in general. And, you know, it's trying to sort of deal with that, as well as kind of subpar performances, or, you know, the fact, and we'll come on to this in a moment, but the fact that it's the same mistakes being made in games. You know, you mentioned earlier about, you know, the number of goals that are conceded in the sort of final quarter of games, the number of wins that have been turned into draws that have been turned into defeats, and it does get quite, you know, it's kind of quite energy sapping. I think there is this kind of apathy around the club that you can sense, even when they were 3-0 up against Livingston. You know, there was barely an atmosphere at Easter Road. It was just really flat, and, you know, it is an interesting kind of prospect what the club does, whether they decide to back Montgomery and say, look, this was always a long-term appointment. I mean, he said it himself that, you know, he came in on a sort of 3-year contract. I think he was expecting to be here for that time. Obviously, he's going to say that, but, you know, there probably does come a point where Hibs have to look at the bigger picture and say, we can't just keep on repeating what we've done in the past and change the manager every sort of 8 to 12 months, because it doesn't allow for anyone to build anything. And then, you know, the team is constantly in transition. It sort of turns into a Scottish Watford, essentially. Apologies to any Watford fans who might be looking in, but, you know, it's just a fact. And, you know, it is, I think it's interesting to sort of see, like, I think there are arguments to be made for moving on from Montgomery. There are arguments to be made for, you know, sticking with him. And I think obviously the club will come out one way or another, and, you know, either, you know, back him or make a decision to go in another direction. But I think it does affect the fan base. You see it, you know, you can see it in the sort of maybe the numbers going to games, specifically home games, because you've always got that kind of core travelling support that do back the team no matter what. And I mean, we saw that again at Motherwell on Saturday with, you know, nearly 3,000 there. And you know, it's I think it's difficult. You're looking at another, you know, a second bottom six finish in 3 years. It's not, you know, it doesn't really sort of, you know, stir the imagination. And, you know, I think it has to be a big summer for, you know, a number of reasons. You've got the investment. There's going to be a big player turnover again. And, you know, I think just the not knowing what's going to happen is really, you know, it's a difficult one to kind of come to terms with. I think, you know, you don't know whether to kind of look forward to the summer or, you know, just to, I suppose, not really know what the story is. But just to, you know, we talked about the sort of same old mistakes being made. Has that sort of concerned you from watching? You know, you've obviously watched the games back. You know, you watched them more than once. Is it?
Yeah.
Can you tell why the same mistakes are being made? Is it, you know, what have you seen from watching them?
Do you know, I think probably it'll require a deeper dive, but when I look back at, so I've kind of flicked through YouTube last night and looked back at some of the goals we lost and tried to work out if there was a bit of a pattern. And I'm sure if I could do a wee deep dive on StatsBomb to find that out, it kind of might show up some. But I think for Montgomery's tenure, he came in, we lost the first couple of games of the season, which obviously like that puts you back. You're already chasing things, and obviously and I know he maybe said that this wasn't the case, but for me personally, I think we were 4-4-2 for a long, long time, and that setup I don't think always helped us at various moments. And I think he obviously took, we got that defeat at home to St Mirren, and that's when we made the sort of tactical tweak and the changes, and obviously brought in some of the signings, and things started to look a little bit better. But that conceding goals, plus 75 minutes like we have done, it kind of says to me that there's just something there, whether it's a game management thing, whether it's an organizational thing or a leader, whether it's the players on the pitch, the management at the side. I think it's probably a mixture of both. And I think it goes back to what you were saying about maybe some of the players and knowing their futures lying elsewhere, and all these different factors just coming into making it like this. We're just not very resolute towards the end of games. And I think on Saturday, when it was about the 85th, 86th minute, I was thinking, right, Motherwell have thrown on Shaw, they've thrown on Ferry, they've got Sam Nicholson on, they've got Theo Bair still on the pitch, they've got all these guys going forward. Why are we not putting Paul Hanlon on, or why are we not throwing Stevenson on just to have an extra body in the box and to defend? And that would probably be the question I would ask Montgomery, is to say, like, why not? Why is that? Why can we not do that to try and shoot up a game? Would that have made a difference in some of these other games? But going back, I mean, some of the times we've lost the goals, you're talking, 98th minute, 94th minute. It'd be a really interesting, deep dive to find out what exactly is going on. But it's certainly something that, you add those extra 16, 18 points in, we'd be sitting fourth. So, and that was me just looking at the time under Montgomery. I know under Lee Johnson as well, we were first couple of games of the season, we lost late goals that that scuppered us as well. So I think you're right. It's about, if we are going to stick with Montgomery, personally, I would like the club to kind of come out and sort of go, look, we're giving this guy the time. We need you to get behind him. Yep, it's not been great this season, but we're getting a player turnover. We've got this investment coming in. We need you to trust us and be really bullish about it. And I think for most supporters, we'd be like, right, fine, okay, we're trusting this guy, and then the ball's in his court to ultimately deliver. But when you look at his win rate and all these different things, and for some fans as well, I know that they really don't feel the style of football's improved or changed. I mean, I probably would disagree with that. Like, I do think, we play a little bit better football than we did under Johnson with Montgomery overall. However, what I would say, Johnson delivered far more bigger results and bigger moments, bigger wins, and things like that. So and if we were to change manager, I genuinely don't know where we would go next.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of big worry, is that Hibs have kind of gone through, sort of going down the list, ticking the boxes, bringing in somebody like Maloney, a sort of young, up and coming, well, not even up and coming manager because it was his first post, but very well respected coach who knew the Scottish game, and that didn't work. Brought in Lee Johnson, somebody with bags of experience, albeit all in England, but having managed, big clubs down there, and that didn't work. And then you've gone down the route of, bringing in somebody who, hasn't had any experience of Scottish football beyond, a few caps for Scotland Future and under 21s, with sort of no real connection to the league, to the teams. And, I think you'd probably say the jury's still out. I think you would argue and say, Johnson said this as well, you need more than one transfer window to put your stamp on the team. And, so far Montgomery's had one. It's maybe been, if you were cutting him some slack, you would say the likes of certainly Mizian Melida, I think Nathan Mariah Welsh, Emi Marcondes to maybe a slightly lesser extent. Luke Amos, obviously unfortunate with his injuries, but those were upgrades on what Hibs had before that. I think the Owen Bevan signing was unfortunate as well, in that I think he was quite keen to get him in for one of the centre back roles, and then his injury meant that he wasn't going to play a part. Nectar Triantis being brought in as a centre back, but then discovering that he was actually better suited to a kind of defensive midfield role. I think the difficulty is that there are a lot of fans who can look at the January business and say, well, that was good, but there are other things that are affecting or other things that are playing a part in their kind of judgment or their decision, which is the style of football is not really what not people aren't really too keen on it in some cases. The playing out from the back, I think, obviously is quite a polarizing style of play. I think there's some people who are very much in favor of it, some who would rather see the end of it. But I think it is difficult as well, because these last 5 games, it'd be very easy to look at it as games that don't really mean as much as if the team was in the top 6. But I think for a lot of reasons, Hibs do need to perform well in the final 5 games of the season, no matter how difficult it might be to try and get up for another trip to Livingston, or a game against Aberdeen, who've had a season quite similar to Hibs actually, in terms of not really going where they would want it to. But what would you want to see from the team from Montgomery in the final 5 games? Is it a chance to try different things? Is it a chance to bring some players in for more game time, or do you just try and you sort of stick with what you've been doing and try and make it just improve it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's massive for him. I think, I don't know what the club are obviously thinking. Obviously, I think the Observer interview you guys did with Malcolm McPherson, they were very much behind him. But that fan power, and when the fans turn, it's always a difficult thing to claw back. So part of me thinks, unless we go out and convincingly win all 5 games, he might be struggling. I think in terms of a setup and things like that, I think he's going to probably stick by his principles and what he's already played. Obviously, I would quite like to see Venti coming back in and getting some game time, just so we can really, assess probably what's going on with him and where his fitness is at, and then try and get him back in the squad. And I'm not the most sort of sentimental Hibs fan, but I do want to make sure, well, I think all fans want to make sure that Hanlon and Stevenson are, if they're both to leave, which it looks like they are to be given the respect and the game time and the things that they should be shown in these last sort of few games, which I really hope they do. So it's funny because Montgomery seems like very principled in terms of how he sets up, how he plays, what he wants to do. He seems to sort of go to the beat of his own drum, and he sticks with it. But I do think, giving Venti some time, maybe phasing some of the younger guys in for some game time as well, obviously can sometimes be a good thing for the fans to see. But obviously for Hanlon and Stevenson, you want to make sure that they're seen off appropriately as well. So I do think, even though it doesn't seem like there's much for us to play for, he still has, I think he's potentially playing for his future, these games for his future, and I'm sure some of the players are as well. Although it will be difficult for them, and I dare say that the home games, whoever they're against, there'll be a bit of there'll be the moaning and stuff pre-game and everyone. But as soon as the fans are in the stadium, we get behind the team. Like, I think that's important to know as well. Like, we're maybe getting portrayed as we are a demanding fan base, but the fans do get behind the team. And listen, we do boo as well. There's no doubt about that. But that's usually at the end of the game when things haven't gone so well. So I do think like the fans will get behind the players. But it's just for them. It's really simple for them. It's go out, put on a show, win these games, and let's like finish the season on a bit of a high, so that we can kick on into the next campaign.
Let's hope so. I think that'll do us for just now. I think we've probably talked the Saturday's game to death, and obviously no game this weekend. We will find out later this week, I think, what the post-split fixtures will be, where Hibs will be going, who they'll be welcoming to Easter Road, and then the fun can begin again for the final 5 games of the season. So just like to say, Craig, thanks for joining us and giving us your expert take on the team and everything that is going on at Easter Roads. Just before we go, we have launched our spring sale on the Hibs Observer. You'll be seeing a lot of this in the coming days. You can get it's £1 for 6 months. You remember we had a similar deal when we launched. We have the same deal back on now as part of our spring sale. That's running until the end of this month, to April the 29th to be exact. And anyone who subscribes is in with a chance of winning a signed Hibs shirt. So You should see along the banner at the bottom of the video the address you need to go to. We do appreciate your support, and it does help us to continue doing videos like this, and also allows us to keep on bringing you, big interviews, Craig's tactical deep dives, scout reports for any potential players who might be coming in, and so much more. So do consider subscribing to the website if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube as well. We appreciate that too. But thank you again for joining us, and we will see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you.